Hello students, I welcome you all for my today's class. So today we are going to discuss on a topic endometriosis. Yes, endometriosis. Coming to its definition, endometriosis is defined as a presence of functioning endometrium, especially the glands and the stroma, in sites other than the uterine mucosa is called as endometriosis. So endometrium is the innermost layer of the uterus. So it is supposed to be present in the third layer itself, but what happens in sometimes we'll find this functioning endometrium in other sites other than the uterine mucosa. So other than the mucous layer, if you find endometrium in other places, then such condition is called as endometriosis. So endometriosis is defined as the presence of functioning endometrium which consists of glands and the stroma in sites other than the uterine mucosa is called as endometriosis. It is not a neoplastic condition, means it is not a cancerous one, but a malignant transformation is also possible. These ectopic endometrial tissues may be found in the endometrium when it is called endometriosis interna or adenomyosis. So whenever the ectopic endometrial tissues are found in the myometrium is a second muscular layer of the uterus. So whenever the endometrium tissues are found in between the myometrium, that is in the second layer, then such a condition is called as endometriosis interna or adenomyosis. It is called as adenomyosis or endometriosis interna. More commonly, however, these tissues are found at sites other than the uterus and are called endometriosis externa or generally referred to as endometriosis. So when we find the endometrium in the sites other than the uterus itself, means other than the uterus like pelvic organs, ovaries, ligaments, etc., then such a condition is called as endometriosis externa or the endometriosis. Endometriosis is a disease of contrast. It is a benign, but it is a locally invasive, disseminates widely. Cyclic hormones stimulates the growth, but continuous hormones suppress it. So cyclic hormones are responsible for its stimulation of its growth. Prevalence. During the last couple of decades, the prevalence of endometriosis has been increasing both in the terms of real and apparent. The real one is due to the delayed marriage, postponement of first conception, and adoption of small family norm. Whereas the apparent one is due to the increased use of diagnostic laparoscopy as well as heightened awareness of this disease complex amongst the gynecology. So there are two ones, like real one and the apparent one. Okay, so the prevalence is about 10%. However, the prevalence is high amongst the infertile women, that is 30 to 40% based on the diagnostic laparoscopy and laparotomy. So coming to its sites, means locations where the endometriosis can be found. The sites can be classified again into three types, that is the abdominal one, extra abdominal, and the remote. Abdominal, extra abdominal, and the remote are the three main sites of the endometriosis. Abdominal, it can occur at any site but is usually confined to the abdominal structures below the level of umbilicus. So abdominal endometriosis can be seen in the abdominal structures below the level of umbilicus. So these are called as abdominal endometriosis. Extra abdominal, the common sites of abdominal scars of hysterectomy, cesarean section, tubectomy, myomectomy. So these are found in the scars of these operations. Then umbilicus is one of the site of extra abdominal site of endometriosis. Episiotomy scar, vagina and cervix. Even it can be found in vagina and cervix. So these are the extra abdominal sites. And the remote sites. Remotes means which are very far. So coming to the sites, the common sites includes the ovaries, pelvic peritoneum, pouch of Douglas, uterosacral ligaments, rectovaginal septum, sigmoid colon, appendix, pelvic lymph nodes, fallopian tubes. Rare and remote sites includes umbilicus, abdominal scar, episiotomy scar, lungs, pleura, ureter, kidneys, legs, arms, and nasal mucosa. So here in this diagram you can see the common sites of endometriosis. See here the scars of the previous surgeries. Here you can see the broad ligaments, rectovaginal septum, and here you can see the ovaries, sigmoid column, uterosacral ligaments, rectum, cul-de-sac, etc. So these are the commonest sites of endometriosis. Yes. Next is the pathogenesis. So pathogenesis still remains unclear and is full of theories. So there are certain theories which are define how the endometriosis can occur, but exact pathogenesis is still unclear. So the principal theories are retrograde menstruation theory, coelomic metaplasia, direct implantation, and lymphatic theory, vascular theory, genetic and immunological factors. So these are certain theories which are try to explain the pathogenesis of endometriosis. So coming to first the retrograde menstruation, Sampson's theory. So what is retrograde menstruation? Here what happens in this theory, there is retrograde flow of menstrual blood through the uterine tubes during the menstruation. See, the menstrual blood is supposed to come out from the uterus through the cervix and the vagina, so it should come out. But what happens in the retrograde menstruation theory is here there will be retrograde flow of menstrual blood through the uterine tubes. So the menstrual blood is going in the upward direction. Instead of coming down through the vaginal canal, it is going in the upward direction through the uterine tubes. It enters into the pelvic cavity. So the endometrial fragments get implanted in the peritoneal surfaces of the pelvic organ. So when it enters into the pelvic cavity, so that blood contains the fragments of endometrium. So these fragments are implanted in the peritoneal surfaces of the pelvic organs. So the dependent sites includes the ovaries, uterosacral ligaments. Subsequently, the cyclic growth and shedding of the endometrium at the ectopic sites occur under the influence of the endogenous ovarian hormones. Retrograde menstruation per se is unlikely to produce endometriosis. Probably a genetic factor or a favorable hormonal milieu is necessary for successful implantation and growth of fragments of endometrium. So only the retrograde menstruation is not a possible cause, but along with that there may be some hormonal milieu and a genetic factor which is responsible for the implantation of that ectopic endometrium and the growth of the ectopic endometrium there. So while this theory can explain the pelvic endometriosis, it fails to explain the endometriosis at the distant sites. So this theory can only explain the pathogenesis of pelvic endometriosis, that because of retrograde menstrual flow through the tubes, the menstrual blood comes into the uterine cavity and it is getting implanted on the peritoneal surface of the pelvic organs. The next theory is called as coelomic metaplasia. It is coelomic metaplasia. Here what happens is the chronic irritation of the pelvic peritoneum by the menstrual blood may cause coelomic metaplasia, which results in the endometriosis. So here, because of the chronic irritation of the pelvic peritoneum by the menstrual blood, there will be coelomic metaplasia. And one more chance is there. Alternatively, the Mullerian tissue remnants may be trapped within the peritoneum. So sometimes what happens, the Mullerian tissue, which is the origin of the development of all the female organs. So sometimes the Mullerian tissues remnants are trapped in the peritoneum and they could undergo the metaplasia and may transformed into the endometrium, because the Mullerian tissue has that capacity to get transformed into any tissue. So because they are the origin, no, so these Mullerian tissue remnants may undergo metaplasia and may become the endometrium. So this is called as the coelomic metaplasia. And the theory can explain the endometriosis of the abdominal viscera, rectovaginal septum and the umbilicus. Next theory is direct implantation. According to this theory, the endometrium or the decidual tissue starts to grow in susceptible individuals when implanted in the new sites. Such sites are abdominal scars following hysterectomy, cesarean section, tubectomy and myomectomy. Endometriosis at the episiotomy scar, vaginal or cervical site can also be explained with this theory. So this theory, however, fails to clarify the endometriosis at sites other than the mentioned. So here what happens, according to this theory, the endometrial or the decidual tissue starts to grow in susceptible individuals when implanted in the newer sites. So because of what happens, the surgery scars, if surgery scars contains the fragments of endometrium, then the endometriosis can start on those sites. So especially on the scar sites, surgical scar sites is common. So this is a direct implantation theory. And another theory is a lymphatic theory. It may be possible for the normal endometrium to metastasize the pelvic lymph nodes through the draining lymphatic channels of the uterus. This could explain the lymph node involvement. Next theory is vascular theory. It is sound at least to explain endometriosis at distant places such as lungs, arms, or thighs. So with the help of blood, the endometrium can enter into the distant places like lungs, arms, and thighs, and it can get implanted there. And one more important theory is genetic and the immunological factors. So genetic basis of endometriosis probably counts for less than 10% of patients. There is 6 to 7 times increased incidence in the first degree relatives. Multifactorial inheritance is thought of. And however, a defect in the local cellular immunity, this is important, a defect in the local cellular immunity may be responsible for the ectopic tissues to grow in abnormal sites only in the susceptible women, because what happens, our immunity tries to kill the foreign cells or the cells from the other places. So here, if there is any defect in the local cellular immunity, then only the ectopic endometrium grows in the abnormal sites. So this is one of the immunological factor which is responsible for the production of endometriosis. Peritoneal macrophages normally remove the menstrual debris by phagocytosis. Pelvic endometriosis is associated with a subclinical peritoneal inflammation resulting in increase in the peritoneal fluid. So subclinical peritoneal inflammation is also associated. In patients with endometriosis, the activated macrophages secretes several factors like cytokines, interleukin 1, alpha, TNF, tumor necrosis factor, integrins, and angiogenic factors. So these are all present in the inflammation sites. So these factors promotes the growth of endometrial cells over the ectopic sites. Ectopic endometrium is more resistant to apoptosis. Furthermore, the activated macrophages reduces the sperm motility, increases sperm phagocytosis, and interferes with the fertilization, thus leading to the possibility of infertility in future. Another theory is the environmental theory. So this theory suggests somatic mutations of the cells due to environmental factors. See, environmental factors also plays the important role in the causation of endometriosis, especially the pollutants, dioxins, etc. So the pollution or the pollutants which are present in the air, they can cause the endometrial causes of endometriosis. Ovarian and deep infiltrating endometriotic lesions are explained with this theory. Thus, it is explained that not all cases of endometriosis at different sites can be explained by a single theory. So, this is a chart showing the sites and the theories. Theories to explain endometriosis at different sites. Sites, pelvic endometriosis and pelvic peritoneum. The theory which can be applicable is retrograde menstruation theory and coelomic metaplasia. Sites like abdominal viscera, rectovaginal septum, umbilicus. The theories are coelomic metaplasia. Abdominal scar, episiotomy scar, vagina, cervix, lymph nodes, distant sites like lungs, pleura, skin, lymph nodes, nerves, etc. The theories which can explain these sites are direct implantation theory, lymphatic spread, vascular spread, genetic and immunological theories. Next, now coming to the pathology. So how the pathology occurs, how the endometriosis occurs, and what are the changes of the endometrium at the site. So pathology in general consideration, the endometrium which contains the glands and stroma in the ectopic sites have got the potentiality to undergo the changes under the action of ovarian hormones. So endometrium in the ectopic sites also have that potentiality to undergo the changes similar to the endometrium which is present in the mucosa of the uterus. So similarly, this endometrium also has the capacity to undergo the changes under the actions of ovarian hormones. So while proliferative changes are constantly evident, the secretory changes are absent in many, maybe due to the deficiency of steroid receptors in the ectopic endometrium. So compared to this, here you will find the more proliferative changes, whereas you will find the less or the absent of the secretory changes. Cyclic growth and shedding. See, here you will find the cyclic growth of the endometrium as well as the shedding continue till the menopause. If a woman is suffering from endometriosis, then that at that ectopic site there will be cyclic growth of the endometrium and cyclic shedding of the endometrium occurs till she reaches the menopause. The periodic shed blood may remains encysted, or else the cyst becomes tense and ruptures. So sometimes that periodic blood which is shedding may become encysted, and sometimes the cyst become tense and rupture. So that blood accumulates and can form the cyst there. As the blood is irritant, there is a dense tissue reaction surrounding the lesion with fibrosis. So when the blood irritates the tissues surrounding it, and there will be some reactions which leads to the fibrosis. If it happens to occur on the pelvic peritoneum, it produces adhesions and puckering of the peritoneum. So suppose if the blood is accumulated inside the peritoneum, there will be formation of adhesions and puckering of the peritoneum. If encysted, the cyst enlarge with cyclic bleeding. So if the accumulated blood forms cyst, then this cyst enlarges with the cyclic bleeding. The serum gets absorbed in between the periods, and the content inside becomes chocolate color. So what happens when the time passes, that serum within the blood gets absorbed in between the periods, and the contents inside the cyst becomes just like a chocolate colored, and this cyst is called as the chocolate cyst. So this cyst is commonly seen in the ovaries. Yes, chocolate cyst. Chocolate cyst may also be due to the hemorrhagic follicular or the corpus luteum cyst, or bleeding into the cystoadenoma. So there are other causes of the chocolate cyst also. So chocolate cysts are also seen in the endometriosis cases. For this reason, the term endometriosis or endometrioma is preferred to the chocolate cyst. So because chocolate cyst is seen in other cases also, that's why it's better to call this cyst here as the endometrial cyst or the endometrioma. In spite of the dense adhesions among the pelvic structures, the fallopian tubes remains patent. But the good thing about the endometriosis is, even though there are many adhesions, but the fallopian tubes remains patent. This is very important. The fallopian tubes are patent. There is no block in the fallopian tubes. Coming to the naked eye appearance, the appearance of the lesion depends on the great extent on the organs involved, extent of the lesion, and reaction of the surrounding tissues. Next is the pelvic endometriosis. How it looks like. Typically there are small black dots, so called as the powder buns. They are black dots. It looks like the powder buns. Seen on the powder buns, seen on the uterosacral ligaments in the pouch of Douglas. Fibrosis and scarring in the peritoneum surrounding the implants is also a typical finding. So you can see here the appearance of black dots and puckered peritoneum. Sites are of involvement of ovary, uterosacral ligaments, and the peritoneum, pelvic peritoneum. You can see here the black dots or the powder burns. Other subtle appearance are red flame shaped areas, red polypoid areas, yellow brown patches, white peritoneal areas, circular peritoneal defects, and subovarian adhesions. These lesions are thought to be more active than the powder burn areas. The ovaries are frequently involved, usually bilaterally. The endometriomas or the chocolate cysts are of varying sizes and are visible as bluish coloration. The ovaries get adherent to the pelvic structures, including the rectum and the sigmoid column. Then coming to the microscopic appearance, there is a presence of endometrial tissues, both the glands and the stroma. Due to the pressure effect, the lining epithelium of the cyst may be present or flattened, cuboidal, or replaced by the granulation tissue. Adjacent to the lining epithelium, there may be presence of large polyhedral phagocytic cells laden with the blood pigment hemosiderin. Hemosiderin will be there. The cyst wall is composed of fibrous tissue and compressed ovarian cortex. So these are about the pathology in general about the endometriosis. So coming to the clinical features of pelvic endometriosis. So coming to the patient's profile, the age is in between 30 to 45 years. Patient is mostly nulliparous or have had one or two children long years prior to the appearance of symptoms. Infertility, voluntary postponement of first conception until a late age, and higher social status, are often related. Thus, it is more common in private than the hospital patients. There is often a positive family history. Outflow tract obstruction is an important cause when it is seen in the teenagers. Symptoms: about 25% of patients with endometriosis have no symptoms. See, 25% of patients suffering from endometriosis have no symptoms, being accidentally discovered either during the laparoscopy or laparotomy. Symptoms are not related with the extent of lesion. Even when the endometriosis is widespread, there may not be any symptom. Conversely, there may be intense symptoms with minimal endometriosis. So the symptoms are not at all related with the extent of the lesion. If it is widespread, it doesn't mean that it will produce the more symptoms. But the most important point is it is related with the depth of penetration. So that the depth of penetration is more related to the symptoms rather than the spread. Lesions penetrating more than 5 mm are responsible for pain, dysmenorrhea and dyspareunia. So 5 mm and more, if the lesion depth is more than 5 mm, then it produces the symptoms like pain, dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, etc. Non-pigmented endometriotic lesions compared to the classical pigmented powder burns lesions produce more prostaglandins and hence are more painful. The symptoms are mostly related to the site of the lesion and its ability to respond to hormones. Midline lesions are more symptom producing. Degree of pain is not related to the severity of endometriosis. So dysmenorrhea, why the dysmenorrhea occurs? Here there is progressively increasing secondary dysmenorrhea. Pain starts a few days prior to the menstruation and get worsens during the menstruation and takes time even after cessation of period to get relief of the pain. So the pain is like it starts few days before the menstruation, it becomes worse during the time of menstruation, and it takes time after the cessation of menstruation. That's why it is called as co-menstrual dysmenorrhea, means it is related with the menstruation. Pain usually begins after few years pain-free menses. The site of pain is usually the deep-seated and on the back and the rectum. Increased secretion of prostaglandin PGF2 alpha thromboxane B2 from the endometriotic tissue is a cause of pain. Second complaint is abnormal menstruation, which is seen in 20%. Menorrhagia is a predominant abnormality. Sometimes if the ovaries are involved, you will find the polymenorrhea, epimenorrhea, premenstrual spotting also seen. Infertility in 40 to 60% of patients. Yes, infertility occurs in 40 to 60% of the patient. Whether endometriosis causes infertility or infertility produces endometriosis is not clear. See, whether endometriosis is responsible for infertility or infertility is responsible for endometriosis, because in the patient profile we have studied the nulliparous women and all, so the is not clear yet. So which is whether it is a cause or it is a disease. Endometriosis is found in 20 to 40% of infertile women, whereas about 40 to 50% patients with endometriosis suffers from infertility. The multiple factors involved in producing infertility is also there mentioned there, already we have studied. The next is the dyspareunia. Dyspareunia is seen in 20 to 40% of patients. Dyspareunia is usually deep. There are different types like superficial dyspareunia and deep dyspareunia. So in this case it is a deep dyspareunia. It may be due to the stretching of the structures of pouch of Douglas or direct contact tenderness. As such, it is mostly found in the endometriosis of the rectovaginal septum or the pouch of Douglas and with fixed retroverted uterus. Chronic pelvic pain. The pain varies from the pelvic discomfort. However, lower abdominal pain and backache, the cause may be multifactorial. The may include because of inflammation or because of inflammatory cytokines or in the involvement of nerves can cause the chronic pelvic pain. Abdominal pain, there may be various degrees of abdominal pain. The pain may be acute due to the rupture of chocolate cyst. So other symptoms includes like urinary symptoms like frequency, dysuria, back pain, even hematuria, Sigmoid colon appendectomy, if it is involved, then patient may complain of the related symptoms like painful defecation, diarrhea, constipation, rectal bleeding, even melena, etc. Chronic fatigue, premenstrual symptoms, bladder, bowel, etc. Hemoptysis, chest pain, surgical scar, cyclic pain, bleeding, etc. Coming to the abdominal examination, abdominal palpation may not reveal any abnormality. A mass sometimes may be felt in the lower abdomen arising from the pelvis. That mass may be the enlarged chocolate cyst or the tubo-ovarian mass due to the endometriotic adhesions. So if there is cyst, then only you can find some mass is in the lower abdomen. The mass is tender with the restricted motility. Pelvic examination, bimanual examination may not reveal any pathology. The expected positive findings are pelvic tenderness, nodules in the pouch of Douglas, nodular feel of the uterosacral ligaments, fixed retroverted uterus, or unilateral or bilateral adnexia mass of the varying sizes. Speculum examination may reveal bluish spots in the posterior fornix. So if you do the speculum examination, you will find the bluish spots in the posterior fornix. Rectal or the rectovaginal examination is often helpful to confirm the diagnosis. So coming to the diagnosis, clinical diagnosis is by the classical symptoms of progressive increasing dysmenorrhea, which is of secondary type, that is the secondary dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, and infertility. So these are the main three symptoms: secondary dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, and the infertility. So there is corroborated by the pelvic findings of nodules in the pouch of Douglas, nodular feel of the uterosacral ligaments, fixed retroverted uterus, unilateral or bilateral adnexal mass, etc. Sometimes many patients have no abnormal findings on the pelvic examination. Coming to the serum marker CA125, a moderate elevation of the serum CA125 is noticed in patients with severe endometriosis. It is not specific for endometriosis. It is significantly raised in the epithelial ovarian carcinoma. So there is one more test. This is the MCP1, that is a monocyte chemotactic protein. Its level is increased in the peritoneal fluid of women with endometriosis. Imaging, yes, ultrasonography, MRI, CT, colonoscopy, laparoscopy, etc. Ultrasonography is not much helpful for the diagnosis. However, the TVS scan can detect the ovarian endometriosis, and rectal scan can also detect the rectosigmoidal endometriosis. MRI is a diagnostic tool. There is a characteristic hyperintensity on T1 weighted images and hyperintensity on T2 weighted images. CT is better compared to ultrasonography in the diagnosis, whereas MRI is useful for the deep infiltrating endometriosis. Colonoscopy, rectosigmoidoscopy, cystoscopy are done when the respective organs are involved. Laparoscopy, yes, laparoscopy here is the gold standard method to diagnose endometriosis. Yes, laparoscopy is the gold standard method for the diagnosing of endometriosis. Confirmation is done by the double puncture laparoscopy or by laparotomy. Other benefits are confirmation of the lesion with the size and extent. So with the help of laparoscopy, you can confirm not only the presence of endometriosis, but you will know the details like the size and extent of involvement. Biopsy can be taken. At the same time, staging can be done. Extent of adhesions can be recorded. Opportunity to do the laparoscopic surgery if needed is also there. The classical lesion of pelvic endometriosis is described as a powder burns or the mastic spots on the peritoneum of the pouch of Douglas. Findings may be recorded on the video or DVD. Microscopically, some of these lesions contain the endometrial gland, stroma, hemosiderin and macrophages. Biopsy confirms confirmation of the excised lesion is ideal, but negative histology does not exclude it. So coming to differential diagnosis, you have to differentiate it with the chronic pelvic pain, ovarian endometrium or the chocolate cyst, rupture of the chocolate cyst, etc. Complications of endometriosis includes endocrinopathy and rupture of the chocolate cyst, infection of the chocolate cyst, obstruction features like intestinal obstruction, ureteric obstruction, which may cause renal infection. Malignancy is rare, the commonest one being the adenocanthoma. See, rupture of chocolate cyst, why it is complicated is during the operation, while separating the adhesion, the cyst sometimes may get ruptured with the escape of chocolate colored blood. The rupture of the cyst can occur spontaneously, causing acute abdomen with clinical features suggestive of acute ectopic. Acute abdomen is confused with the torsion or rupture of the ovarian tumor, disturbed ectopic pregnancy, and appendicitis or diverticulosis. So here is the endocrinopathy in the endometriosis. Next is the staging. The confirmed endometriosis should be approximately staged based on the laparoscopic findings to predict prognosis, to choose the therapy, and to evaluate the treatment protocol. So scoring is revised by the American Fertility Society and is represented in a table. The stage is determined by adding specific points given to each. This is called as AFS staging. AFS staging. So this is a table showing the AFS staging, that is American Fertility Society scoring system of endometriosis. You can see here the endometriotic lesions depending on the site, and the depth is given here, the scoring. The endometriosis present in the peritoneum, superficial or deep. If it is less than 1 centimeter, superficial 1 score, deep 2 score. 1 to 3 centimeter, superficial 2 score, and deep 4 score. If it is more than 3 centimeter, superficial 4 score, and the deep 6 score. Similarly, ovary, superficial and deep right and left ovaries. So less than 1 centimeter, right 1 score, deep 4 score. Same 1 score for superficial and deep 4. So here the 216 for the depth of 1 to 3 centimeter. 420 420 is more than, if it is more than 3 centimeter, superficial and deep. So here again the posterior cul-de-sac obliteration, adhesions on the ovaries and the tubes they have given here. Partial enclosure 1/3 to 2/3, more than 2/3 enclosure, 1 to 4 if it is in the superficial, and for D 4 8 16. Like that classification is given. If the fimbriated end of the fallopian tube is completely enclosed, change the point assignment to 16. Stage 1 is minimum, the score will be 1 to 5. Stage 2, it is mild, the score is in between 6 to 15. And stage 3 is moderate, the score in between 16 to 40. Stage 4 is severe, the score is more than 40. So this is a staging. Staging has not been correlated with the fertility outcome. It is just important for the mode of therapy, for the treatment aspect. So coming to the treatment of endometriosis, endometriosis is needed to be treated as it is a progressive disease, 30 to 60%. So the treatment includes the preventive and the curative. Preventive treatment, the following guidelines may be prescribed to prevent or minimize the endometriosis, like to avoid tubal patency test immediately after curettage or around the time of menstruation, because if the tubal patency test or the insufflation test, if it is done immediately after curettage or at the time of menstruation, then there is a possibility of retrograde menstruation or the implantation of the endometrium. Forcible pelvic examination should not be done during or shortly after menstruation. Married women with family history of endometriosis are encouraged not to delay the first conception but to complete the families. Curative includes, the objectives are to abolish or minimize the symptoms in cases of like pelvic pain, dysmenorrhea, dyspareunia, etc., and to improve the fertility to prevent reoccurrence. Expected treatment options for pelvic endometriosis includes expectant management, that is observation only, medical therapy like hormones and others, surgery conservative definitely, and combined therapy includes the medical as well as the surgical aspect. Determinants of treatment options include the age of the patient, size and extent of lesion, severity of symptoms, location of disease, desire for fertility, and results of previous therapy. So coming to first the expected treatment. Expectant treatment, endometriosis is a progressive disease in about 30 to 60% of women. It is not possible to predict in which women it will progress. Some form of treatment is often needed regardless of the clinical profile and to arrest the progress of the disease. So here case selection is also very important. So this is the case selection for expected treatment. Minimal endometriosis with no other abnormal pelvic finding, unmarried, young women who are ready to start family and approaching menopause. So these are the candidates which are suitable for the expected treatment. Protocols for expected management includes observation with the administration of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs or PSIs, that is the prostaglandin synthase inhibiting drugs, are used to relieve the pain, like ibuprofen 800 to 1200 mg or mefenamic acid 150 to 600 mg a day is quite effective. The married women are encouraged to have conception. Pregnancy usually cures the condition. So this is very important. Pregnancy cures the condition. This is due to the absence of shedding and residual changes in the ectopic endometrium causing its necrosis and absorption. Next is the hormonal treatment. The aim of hormonal treatment is to induce atrophy of the endometriotic implants. So the why the hormonal treatment is important is it is helping in the inducing the atrophy of the endometriotic implants. It should be considered suppressive rather than curative because of high recurrence rate. The mechanism of endometrial atrophy is either by producing pseudo-pregnancy or pseudomenopause or medical oophorectomy. So here the mechanism is pseudo-pregnancy. Either you produce pseudo-pregnancy, pseudomenopause or the medical oophorectomy. Pseudo-pregnancy means give the combined oral pills. Pseudomenopause by giving the danazol, or by medical oophorectomy by giving GnRH agonist. So the hormonal use is gratifying in superficial peritoneal implants and the endometriosis of less than 1 centimeter. The drugs used are combined estrogen and progesterone oral pills, progestrogens, danazol and GnRH analogs. All the drugs are used continuously to produce amenorrhea, and as such individualization of the dose is required. So combined OC pills, low dose contraceptive pills may be prescribed either in the cyclic or continuous fashion, with advantages in the young patients with mild disease who wants to defer pregnancy. So it also gives the contraceptive benefit in them. It causes the endometrial desudalization and atrophy. It may induce the amenorrhea. It relieves the dysmenorrhea also. Anastrozole can also be used to reduce the growth and the pain of endometriosis. Progestogens, it causes desudalization, and high doses suppresses ovulation and induce amenorrhea. Oral route is commonly used. However, injectable preparations and the depot form may be withheld in patients who wishing to conceive. Ovulation may remain suspended for several months following withdrawal of the therapy. The side effects are well tolerated. The drug is comparatively cheaper than the danazol. Progesterone antagonists like mifepristone 50 to 100 mg per day has also been effective. Then LNG-IUS, levonorgestrone releasing IUCDs, when used is found to reduce dysmenorrhea, pelvic pain, dyspareunia and menorrhagia, etc. It is useful for rectovaginal endometriosis. Then danazol therapy is to be started from the 5th day of the menstrual cycle. The dose is 600 to 800 mg daily and is variable, depends upon the extent of the lesion, but should be adequate enough to produce amenorrhea. The patient should use barrier methods of contraception to avoid virilization of a female fetus in accidental pregnancy. Then gestrinone has got the same mechanism action that of danazol, but less side effect results. So it is to be administered twice a week. GnRH analogs is also very helpful when used continuously. It acts as a medical oophorectomy. That is a stage of hypoestrogenism and amenorrhea, and here the goal is to maintain a reduced level of serum estrogen 30 to 45 pg per ml so that the growth of endometriosis is suppressed. So long-term therapy more than 6 months should be avoided. Here is the hormones used in the endometriosis, the drugs, the dose and mechanism, and their side effect is given. Drugs combine estrogen 1 to 2 tablets, the dose. Mechanism, effect is just like pseudo-pregnancy, side effects are tolerated. Progesterone oral pills 6 to 9 months dose duration and same effect from pseudo-pregnancy. Progestogens oral medroxyprogesterone acetate 100 mg 3 times for 6 to 9 months. Dydrogesterone 10 to 20 mg daily for 6 to 9 months. Northestrone 10 to 30 mg daily for 6 to 9 months. They produces a pseudo-pregnancy like effect and their side effects are well tolerated. IM medroxyprogesterone 150 mg 3 months interval for 2. IUCDs levonorgestrone intrauterine contraceptive devices. Danazol 400 to 800 mg orally in 4 divided doses for 6 to 9 months. It produces the effects such like the pseudomenopause, and side effects are less tolerated. Gestinon 1.25 to 2.5 mg twice a week for 6 to 9 months. Pseudomenopause well tolerated. GnRH analogs leuprolide 3.75 mg IM monthly for 6 months. Neferalin 200 mg intranasal daily for 6 months. Goserelin 3.6 mg depot 1 IM monthly for 6 months. The effect is such like that of medical oophorectomy, and side effects are well tolerated. Coming to next is the surgical management of endometriosis. So the indications are endometriosis with severe symptoms unresponsive to the hormonal therapy. So whenever the hormonal therapy fails, at that time you can go for the surgical management of endometriosis. Severe and deeply infiltrating endometriosis to correct the distortion of pelvic anatomy. Endometriomas of more than 1 centimeter are the suitable candidates for the surgery. Surgery may be conservative or definitive. Conservative surgery is planned to destroy the endometriotic lesions in an attempt to improve the symptoms and the same time to preserve the reproductive function of the individual. Laparoscopy is commonly done to destroy the endometriotic lesions by excision or ablation, by electrodiathermy or by laser vaporization. Conservative surgical treatment in minimum to mild endometriosis, that is ablation plus adhesiolysis, improves the fertility outcome. There is one condition called as laparoscopic uterosacral nerve ablation. LUNA is done when the pain is very severe. The advantage of laser is to cut the tissues precisely with the less chances of damage to the underlying vital structures. Great deal of technical expertise is essential to avoid injuries to the ureters. Surgical treatment improves fertility and symptoms in women with moderate and severe endometriosis. So there are other sides of endometriosis are ovarian endometriosis, in which the treatment is medical surgical with the help of hormones. Then endometriosis at special sites includes the abdominal scar, umbilicus, bladder, ureter, gut, cervix, vagina and lungs. Scar endometriosis, it usually manifests following the abdominal hysteroscopy, cesarean section, myomectomy or even tumectomy. So you can see the bleeding from a scar endometriosis. The patient was examined during her menstruation. So implantation theory can explain this. The patient complains of painful nodular swelling over or adjacent to the scar, which increases in size and often bleeds during the periods. The size is variable, nodular field tender with restricted mobility. Associated pelvic endometriosis is usually absent. The same type of nodular swelling may be found over the episiotomy scar. Treatment is by excision. Hormonal therapy is ineffective. Umbilicus, there is a nodular painful swelling which increases in size and becomes tender during the periods. At times bleeding may also occur. Coelomic metaplasia theory can be explain its cause. The treatment is by excision. Bladder, the patient complains of the bladder symptoms like dysuria, frequency, hematuria, lower abdominal pain, especially during period. Cystoscopic examination reveals the blue area of the mucosa. IVP may reveal the ureteric stricture, hydroureter, etc. Treatment is not much effective with hormones. Here you have to go for the local excision of the bladder wall and repair should be done. Gut, the rectum, sigmoid colon and even the small intestine are the commonest sites. Coelomic metaplasia theory can explain the endometriosis at these sites. The mucosa is not involved, a differentiating feature from the malignancy. The patient complains of periodic clocky pain on the defecation, at times bleeding per rectum, especially during periods. Associated pelvic endometriosis is a constant feature, and there may be even features of subacute intestinal obstruction. So here rectal examination can confirm the diagnosis. Lungs, pleura and brain are the rare size. Patient may complain of the pneumothorax, seizures during menstruation. Treatment, hormone therapy may be effective. If not, then surgery is indicated. Cervix and vagina, the lesions are usually due to implantation of the endometrium over the trauma inflicted at the operation or following delivery. The only complaint may be dyspareunia. The lesion is revealed by speculum examination. Confusion with the rise of the cervical cancer. There is bleeding on touch in the carcinoma. Confirmation is done by biopsy. treatment is by hormone is ineffective, so you have to go for the surgical excision. So this is all about endometriosis. Thank you.